When you think of red bones in the modern day, you think of a lighter pigmented melanated sister. But I guess there's a secret history when it comes to the term red bone. So today we got the secret history of the red bones, NYTN.
Neither white nor black, as well as I can find out, but this is an isolated, multi generationally mixed group of people. And they were able to find a safe haven and define themselves freely in a place that didn't require you to be defined. Dear Sir, in reply to your letter of April 22nd, I will say I am unable to tell you how the name Redbone originated for the people. I suppose you know the kind of people called Redbones. They are neither white nor black, as well as I can find, and what percentage of white, Negro, and Indian blood flows through their veins, primarily in the areas of Louisiana, Texas. So you might say, hey, wait a second, that sounds a lot like being Melungeon or Creole. And you would be right. And that's why the surnames I'm going to give you, you're going to see those in all three of those communities. Hi, I'm Danielle Romero. Thank you so much for being with me here on my channel, where we talk about American identity and family stories. And I've been looking into my own family stories for the past 4 years on this channel. I started researching Creole history because my mom's grandmother was from Louisiana and had Creole ancestry, but that kind of led me down the path of researching and finding my Melungeon and Redbone roots. When I went to Louisiana for the first time a couple of years ago, I went to meet family. One of the cousins, when I first met him, pulled me aside and he said, you could tell I was family because he said to me, you're a Redbone. I was like, I like the band. I know the band. I was like, I don't know what you're saying to me though. Honestly, he couldn't have been more right. So we're going to talk about the Redbones today. Who were the Redbones? Where did the Redbones come from? How do you know if you come from this group? I'm going to give you some surnames that can definitely pinpoint that connection. One of the things that I've seen in comments when I've mentioned Redbone in other videos are people talking about this cultural understanding about what Redbone has meant in the Black community. Now, that's not what I'm talking about today, but it's definitely connected to what we're talking about in general. So Redbone is something that you can be labeled as. Also, they would say stuff like high yellow, things like that. These are ways that folks in the Black community have talked about lighter skinned members. Redbone is a specific ethnic group, triracial isolate group from Louisiana and parts of Texas. And it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with that other definition, but it kind of does. And so we're going to get to that. There's an ambiguity about who is a Redbone, and it's been ambiguous for a long time. There was a letter written in 1893 by a man named Albert Rigmaiden. This is a wild letter, and it talks about the Redbone community, about the people who were considered Redbone and their last names. And so we have a primary source telling us all about this history. This guy, Furman's trying to understand this group, and Albert Rigmaiden is there in Lake Charles, Louisiana, so he's telling him everything he knows. When Furman's like, I need to know who these people are. What can you tell me? And we have this document. And it's incredible. And he was actually the treasurer. He was writing back to a man named MacDonald Furman. And this was a man who was conducting private ethnological research. And so they're exchanging letters back and forth about the Redbones. And what's interesting about that letter, before I read it to you, which I'm going to, is that he's writing to him from Lake Charles, Louisiana. And Lake Charles, Louisiana was actually one of my mom's DNA communities on Ancestry DNA. And I was really surprised to see that, but also not. So it really was helping create context while I was researching. I want to just jump into the letter and we're going to chat about it together. So here's what he wrote. Dear Sir, in reply to your letter of April 22nd, I will say I am unable to tell you how the name Redbone originated for the people called Redbones. I think the Negroes were the first to give that name, as they, the Negroes, have no use or love for them and they don't like the Negroes any better. I suppose you know the kind of people called Redbones. They are neither white nor black, as well as I can find out. The oldest ones came from South Carolina many years ago. There are a great many.
Before she continues the letter, it's kind of crazy that the so-called Negroes and the so-called red bones back then had some type of tension. And I don't know if it's that crazy anymore, but it was definitely a time in this modern age where, they were saying the light skin versus the dark skin. And I hear people talk about that all the time, how darker skin or lighter skin is better than darker, whatever, right? Vice versa, or opposite, yin yang. And that's just crazy how long that's been going, at least in the 1900s.
of them in this parish and in Rapides Parish and Vernon Parish and some other parishes in the state of Louisiana, and a good many in Texas too. Some of these people are as good as citizens as anybody, and some are rascally and treacherous, but you will find that among any people. This treasurer for the parish is writing back and saying, listen, okay, you're doing research on the Redbones. Okay, here are the families we know them to be. I'm going to tell you about the list of surnames in a little bit. We'll come back to that, and I want to find out if your family names are on there. Mine were. So back to the letter. He said, these people keep pretty well together and they marry amongst themselves mostly, but occasionally a white man or a white woman marries among them. But if they do, he says, it's generally a low class of white people. That's what he's saying. It's a very unpleasant situation to live about these people. And for this reason, they are not looked on as being Negroes, Indians, nor white people. And as this is white people's country, the white people don't put themselves on equality socially with any other people except white people. Although some of these people are perfect gentlemen and ladies and well-educated. So he's still talking about the Redbones here. I think they get along exceedingly well and peaceably considering all of these drawbacks. As near to the facts as I am, trusting it will give you the desired information, yours truly, A. Rig Maiden. This letter is incredible. Incredible. Now, do these people have a bias? For sure. For sure. Does he have a perspective he is filtering his information through? Of course. But we're getting so much information about, one, how the Redbone community was perceived from contemporaries on the outside, and two, just straight up information about them. I have other videos on the Redbones. How did they see themselves? How did they identify? I've actually interviewed some descendants from these communities, and I can link to that at the end. Now, I want to read another letter to you. This is from 1897. So anybody who tells you that the Redbones were not a historic community, send them this video. This letter, was over 100 years ago, and this group is being discussed as a separate group. And so this was the editor of a paper, and it's about the Goins family, which for me is exciting because I'm a direct descendant. My third grandmother was a Goins. And so this is what it says, quote, among that isolated and mixed breed of people of Privateer Township who are classified as colored, but they should properly be known as Redbones, is found the name Goins. The founder of this family, so I've been told, was a, quote, yellow man whose wife was a mixed breed Indian. And he goes on to talk about one of the Goins family members, and he says, quote, his features are copper-colored skin, and they show the presence of Indian blood in his veins. Now, another descendant of the Goins couple is Tom Gibbs, a pastor of a little church in the southeastern Privateer, which is attended by Redbone people. And so they have their own community. They have their own church. They're being classified. He's saying you shouldn't call them colored, but people are saying they're not white. But he's saying they're not Negro, they're not Indian, they're just their own group. Now, is this a race of people? No, obviously it's not a race of people, but this is an isolated, multi-generationally mixed group of people that are just kind of sticking together. And he goes on to say, quote, I might remark that this boy is a member of the Colored Wateree Baptist Association. And he says, quote, I think Gibbs shows his Indian blood, while it would greatly puzzle the ethnologist to determine what percentage of white, Negro, and Indian blood flows through their veins. The name is or was found among that peculiar people, the Croatan of North Carolina, which unique race is believed by historical investigators to be descendants of Sir Walter Raleigh's famous Lost Colony. Okay, this is a lot. But again, this is another primary source for us, showing that the Redbones are, one, considered their own group, and two, kind of getting us a little peek at how people were seeing them and discussing them. So let's go back in time a little bit more.
So as of right now, they don't know how the name came to be, and they don't truly even know their race. They just believe they're a mixed race of people. And the guy before that with his letter assumes that the Negroes, the Negroes, named the Redbones. So, all right.
We're going to come back to the surnames, I promise you. But we're going to go back to the early 19th century. This is no man's land. This was a place that defied the rule of nations. It was also known as the neutral ground or the neutral strip. So imagine this vast territory. It's in between Louisiana and Texas. This is a land of swamps, of virgin forests. And this land became so hotly disputed between the United States and Spain after the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. So the United States was saying that we owned all the way to the Rio Grande after the Louisiana Purchase. But Spain is saying, no. Like, pump the brakes on that. You only get to the Red River. And so what happens is they take this section that's being disputed because neither side will budge. And it leads to the creation of no man's land, the neutral strip. And this land was actually outside the jurisdiction of either nation. This is where the Redbones lived. It wasn't Spanish, it wasn't American, and I think that really encapsulates this idea of the Redbone experience of they don't belong in this group, and they don't belong in this group, and this land doesn't belong to this nation, and they're allowed to just be their own thing. And so I actually found my family in this land, going through this land, through the records. It was just really fascinating to see the Redbone people navigating a world that was often unkind to those who didn't fit in these societal norms or these black-white boxes. And the neutral strip reflected this in a geographical way that I found really poetic and beautiful. But
That is pretty interesting that they were able to get a strip of people who we still don't even know their ethnicity, right? Or is it just is it just mixed breed? Is that what we calling them? I don't want to call them that as if they're uh felines or dogs or something like that, but um we haven't got a definite answer to what it is besides that they're mixed.
neutral strip was more than just a refuge for the Redbone people. It actually became a place of smugglers and pirates and illicit activities, because remember, no nation was taking ownership or authority over this area. It was dangerous sometimes. It was kind of a free-for-all. There was an area that was so notorious that actually President John Quincy Adams himself once referred to this area as the back door of the United States. And so among the most infamous characters to emerge from this period was John Murrell, who was a land pirate, and at the time his name was super synonymous with lawlessness of the neutral zone. He had a band of outlaws there. Now, a lot of these people were considered Redbone, but not everybody who was Redbone was a pirate. But the neutral zone was also just another place for people to do as they pleased without any consequences. So it was a corridor for smuggling enslaved people, particularly after the importation of slaves was made illegal and prohibited in 1808. And then a legendary pirate who a lot of Louisiana people know, Jean Lafitte, used the waterways of these rivers, and he did smuggle enslaved people, contraband goods, into the U.S. And so that just kind of added to the reputation of this place for being, it's not a part of what's going on in the rest of the country. But what about the Redbones? So I want to get back to the surnames with you. Trying to figure out, who are the Redbones? Can you tell me who these people are? And I think the majority consensus is that this group is considered just a group of mixed-race individuals, and primarily in the areas of Louisiana, Texas, and South Carolina. Their background is mostly a blend of Native American, European, and African. And so you might say, hey, wait a second, that sounds a lot like being Melungeon or Creole. And you would be right. And that's why the surnames I'm going to give you, you're going to see those in all three of those communities. I'm going to give you the surname.
Let's look at these surnames. All right. So 1830, a large group of Redbones settled on the west side of Savin River. All right. Some of the family names in that area were Adams, Bass, Bennett, Bond, Brack, Brown, Clark, Coleman, Cole, Collins, Davis, Drody, Hall, Harper, Hart, James, Johnson, Knight, Lee, Lewis, Martin, Maddox, Moore, Nash, Page, Parker, Perkins, Powell, Smith, Stringer, Taylor, Thompson, Weeks, West, White, Willis, Williams, Woods, Wright, and Young. All right. That's some great information right there.
And then we're going to jump back to the physical traits. So here are some, and I'm going to give you more. Ashworth. I did a whole video on the Ashworths, and that I can link to. Goins. This is in my tree. Perkins. Drake. Another name of my family tree. Hooser. Sweat. Buxton. Doyle. Dial. Johnson. Cash. Exclavant. I'm going to give you some more, but we're going to jump back down to the physical traits before we come back to the rest of the names.
Hold on, let me rewind just a little bit just to make sure I'm not making a mistake with what I read right before she read that. A large group of Redbones settled on the west side of the Savannah River in what we today call Newton County, Texas. Some of the family names were, all right, what I read already. In 1830, relations between Texas and Mexico reached a new low when Mexico forbid further immigration into Texas by settlers from the United States. All right.
Let me give you. So their physical traits obviously varied widely, and we've talked about this for folks again who are Creole, Melungeon, anybody who's generationally mixed. But often, not always, but often you would have tan or darker skin that had a copper hue, high cheekbones, straight to wavy dark hair. But why would these people be a separate community? It's like, when you see people that are mixed, it doesn't necessarily mean like, okay, we're our own separate group now. Why would they be considered their own group as opposed to being like Melungeon or Creole? And I think we've talked about this a lot, but this is at a time where things are extremely dichotomous. It's like, are you black or are you white? And as you can see from the letters, the Redbones were considered either, and they were considered fully Indian or fully Negro or fully whatever crazy terms they're using to break people up into groups. And so the formation of this group has to be considered in light of the historical and geographical reality of what they're living in. We have to situate ancestor stories in history. We can't really understand their decisions or their actions unless we understand the things that were pressing on them from all sides. And so a lot of people will agree that the Redbone group emerged from the complexities of racial mixing in early American history. This is like foundational American history right here, okay? And what about the name? So the name itself is kind of a riddle. What did Redbone mean? There are many explanations for what people think Redbone means. I have read a ton. I'll tell you just a couple of what I've read. I'm sure you probably know some more, so let me know. Some people believe it was just because folks had kind of a reddish hue to their skin. Others propose it was just a derogatory term. I've read stuff where it had to do with the area having red clay. And there was another one, I think it was a Caribbean term. And it looks like it's spelled Red Ebo, but I think it's pronounced Redbone. And that has to do with just folks who are mixed. And that's basically what it means. I'd love to hear what you know or have heard about that for sure. And I think if we're looking at a Venn diagram and we're comparing Melungeon and Creole and Redbone, you're going to see, yes, these are distinct communities, but there's a lot of overlap, a lot of the same surnames, a lot of family connections. If you have Redbone lineage or you think you do, one of the major things to look at is the location where your family lived. So you do look at surnames, maybe you have taken a DNA test and you see like very mixed, but another thing is to look for where did your family live? So El Camino Real, the King's Highway, essentially, was going through these posts. We had Natchitoches, Louisiana, that's where my family was, and then on the east, and it was connected all the way to Nacogdoches, Texas, on the other end. My family also lived there. That's the west side of this road. And so people are traveling across this road that were connected by El Camino Real. And actually, I was on El Camino Real for a little bit when I went to Louisiana. I didn't have a full understanding of what it meant. Now I do. This group, the Redbones, were going back and forth between these two places. And you see this strong sense of communities on either side of this long road. So there's definitely more to talk about. This is just kind of putting back out there and getting this conversation.
All right. So when it comes to the Redbones, it seems to me as if it's a group of mixed people that settled in between spot near Louisiana where the Spain and US were clashing for that area, and a group of mixed people were able to settle right there and then name their own, well, be their own thing. And from the parts of it, we don't really know how they got that name. Some say a Negro, and Negroes, I should say, and so some say Caribbean, all that good stuff. So it's no real definite answer to that. So yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. That's what it is. All right, man. But shout out to the Redbone. Shout out to Louisiana. Shout out to Spain. Shout out to USA. Shout out to Creoles and excuse me. Whatever, man. Shout out to the melanated world. We out.